Back-to-school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is Clear and Present Danger.
It's Die Hard in the war on drugs. Here we go. Phil, how are you? I bet you're good. I bet you're good.
I'm
today.
good.
Tell me why. Why are you so good?
Because we're doing a huge film and we needed someone
to bring in
someone
the big
big for this one.
Yes.
So we have a very special guest on the show, a SAG Award-winning actor, writer, director, comic book author, and host of two of the biggest and best film podcasts in the entire world, the multiple award-winning How Did This Get Made and the critically acclaimed Unspooled, both of which are phenomenal shows that weekly top the charts on the Apple iTunes Top 100 podcasts. We are beyond thrilled to welcome Mr. Paul Scheer.
Oh, wow. What an introduction. I mean, I don't know if I can live up to that.
You already have, Paul.
I have to say, when I heard the title of this podcast and I went and listened to episodes, I was immediately in. Die Hard to me, Die Hard on anything. I mean, really, this is a podcast that needed to be done. I love what you're doing. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much. And it brings us to the first sort of question, and I know that you've covered it on Unspooled with a phenomenal episode that I just re-listened to when you and Amy Nicholson did a brilliant deep dive on Die Hard. But I'm curious for our listeners to hear, what's your personal history with Die Hard?
So Die Hard is incredibly formative for me because I am a huge Bruce Willis fan, or I grew up a big Bruce Willis fan. Bruce Willis was on Moonlighting when I was a kid, and there couldn't be anyone cooler than Bruce Willis. He had an album that came out called The Return of Bruno. I thought Bruce Willis wrote Under the Boardwalk. Like you couldn't give me enough Bruce Willis. And I grew up in a time where buddy cop movies in general, were just a staple of my cinema diet. And I loved them. And so seeing Die Hard was truly a mind-blowing experience. I would say that I probably came into the franchise the same way I came into James Bond. I came in on Die Hard 2, went back to appreciate Die Hard 1, right? Because Die Hard 1 was R, and I was at a point in my life where I really couldn't navigate Die Hard 1, even though it was kind of okay. Look, there were certain things I could rent, certain things I couldn't, and I went backwards to it. But Die Hard 2, for whatever reason, I was allowed to see that. And Die Hard 2 was my number one for a very long time. And then, just like Roger Moore was my favorite James Bond until I saw others. So yeah, Die Hard to me feels like not only a movie that I watch, at least once a year, and that time of year is often around Christmas. And I don't care for the debate about whether or not it's a Christmas movie. It's a movie that takes place during Christmas. It's a Christmas movie.
Amen.
This is the way that we go. This is, but I went back and was such a Die Hard fan that I actually read the books that Die Hard was based on just because I wanted a further connection to it. So it is a part of my DNA. I love it so much. And I truly don't think it can be beaten. I still think it holds up to this day. The original Die Hard is really, you're hard-pressed, even with technology and all these other things. It's just in that perfect cusp of enough technology that doesn't feel super dated. It exists in a world where it's okay, yeah, this isn't if they had a cell phone, it would be way easier. That doesn't really come into play here, and the second one, sure. Third one, different things. But yeah, Die Hard is a formative movie. Like I said, I love Die Hard. So
Well, you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Phil, you may have a new co-host for the show, to be honest. I think I'm going to step away.
Amazing. No, I love to hear that. And that is really interesting that you kind of went backwards with Die Hard 2 first. And we'll get to this in a second, but this film actually has quite a lot of connections with Die Hard 2, as well as Die Hard, the original Die Hard. So what's your relationship with the movie that we're discussing today, with Clear and Present Danger?
All right. So again, I come from this background of watching action movies, and whatever action movie was there, even if it wasn't for me, I was seeing. So Hunt for Red October, I liked it just fine. I really like Patriot Games because Indiana Jones is in it, right? How can you not? That was the upgrade for me, and conversely, Sean Connery, James Bond was in Hunt for Red October. I remember having a solid connection to Patriot Games. I tried to read Patriot Games when you're a child and you're reading Tom Clancy. That is like trying to read Ulysses. Like, it's
Absolutely.
like it is dense. It's dense. It's boring. It's technical. It's but I read it because I was like, oh, I feel like this is what adults read, Patriot Games, And then I really remember, and when we were talking about doing the show, I was like, oh, I really want to do Clear and Present Danger because I think that's the best one. And I have to say, well, we'll talk about it, but my memory of Clear and Present Danger is very different. My memory of Clear and Present Danger really eliminates the first 90 minutes and really the last 30 is what I remember the most from Clear and Present Danger and why I was like, yeah, I like this movie. But, it's a lot of dad. This is Maximum Dad. This is, this is members only jackets. This is, it's interesting because in a way, this is the role that Harrison Ford should be playing now, right? Like, but back then it was kind of this come down. Like you were used to him doing more action, and it was like, oh no, this is a guy who doesn't want to get involved. Like he's just an analyst. He's just an analyst. I believe in the Tom Clancy books, he becomes president at one point.
He does, yeah. And they've talked about doing a Jack Ryan president movie with Harrison Ford. Like I feel like now would be he's age appropriate, so to speak, for the part now.
Yeah.
Sign me up. Sign me up.
Yeah, I would watch that. I'm on board.
I love where you're going with this because it's right in the sweet spot of what we discuss here. Before we get too more into that, why don't we do a little top line fact
Phil,
check just to put this in context
about the film Clear and Present Danger.
So Clear and Present Danger had its wide release on August 3rd, 1994, which was approximately 2 weeks after our last film, True Lies. So we're now 6 years after the release of Die Hard in the summer of '88. As you just said, it's based on the novel by Tom Clancy. The adapted screenplay was written by John Milius, a very interesting figure who we'll talk about. Yes. Donald E. Stewart, who was involved in Patriot Games, as I recall. And Steven Zaillian, absolutely thoroughbred top screenwriter of the last 30 years. It was directed by Philip Noyce, produced by Mace Neufeld and Robert Remy, and it stars Harrison Ford, Willem Dafoe, Anne Archer, and James Earl Jones, amongst many others in this incredible supporting cast. And on an estimated budget of $62 million, it grossed $215.9 million. A significant hit, which kind of says a lot about, we were debated about, Liam and I were talking about this before the show, about how sometimes there's been a narrative that's like, oh, they don't make movies like this anymore. Like it's a bit of a hacky take now, and I'm certainly guilty of it, right? But I would say
guilty of that take.
Yeah, I've literally dedicated a podcast to being that guy. However, a movie just came out recently called Oppenheimer that I would suggest is kind of like pretty similar in the sense that it's an expansive, long movie with international scope, with a huge ensemble cast that is about multi-layered storylines and also a sort of procedural about governmental process and bureaucracy, and it's grossed nearly $1 billion. So it kind of goes to show that this film is still, these types of films are timeless and have an appetite. Like, what do you think about that? Would you agree?
What I think is this: who is going to the movies, right? And I think we're constantly in this battle of who are we making movies for? And for a long time, in the last, decade or so, I think we were aiming to a much younger audience. But you have James Mangold keeping the dad move alive, or movie, I should say.
And dad
movie
moves.
alive.
And dad moves.
Yeah, dad move. Yeah, it's like there are these movies. It's the same way I feel about when, a movie like Girls Trip or Sex and the City does like this amazing box office. People are like, who knew? Who knew that, Crazy Rich Asians, there was an audience that wanted this? It's like, yeah. You got to make the movies for you got to find these avenues. And I think that if you do a 80 for Brady, you're going to bring out a certain audience. If you do a movie like this, you're going to bring out a certain audience. And the people who don't go to see movies are going to see Oppenheimer because that's an adult movie. And I think that's what I really liked about Oppenheimer too. It's like, oh, it's like an adult movie. I haven't seen an adult movie. And I grew up in a time where it was only adult movies. It was like these thrillers, these sexual, a lot of sexual movies, but like I look around on this movie and I go, wow, there's not, John Milius is a perfect example of why this movie works. It's like, hey, I'm a man, I make these man movies, and we're talking about, goddamn it, drugs and in Mexico, and some fucked up shit is going on. It's like, there's an energy there that I just feel like, and I think we should be making movies for all the segments.
Yeah.
But I think that sometimes we were just trying to make movies for one. And so we get into the zone where like, oh, another kids, like kids that are 29 playing 18 in a house. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well, it's interesting you said, because I actually before I left today, I pulled up what were the top 10 movies of this year. And it actually kind of backs up your point because it was quite eclectic. The Lion King was number one. Then you had Forrest Gump, True Lies, The Mask, Speed, The Flintstones, which I was surprised because I thought that was a flop, but maybe it was just critically unsuccessful. Dumb and Dumber, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Interview with the Vampire, and Clear and Present Danger was at number 10. So that's such a good point because sometimes we fall into that trap of thinking movies need to be this and they need to be this, or we kind of go to these extremes, but actually there should be kind of something for everybody, for all ages, demographics, and taste. I did wonder if you had any particular memories of this golden summer of 94 where...
Yeah, this is a golden summer of like weird highs and lows because what you're talking about is like Beverly Hills Cop 3, totally a bummer. Flintstones, totally a bummer. City Slickers 2, not as good as City Slickers 1. Wolf, bummer. Wow. The Shadow, bummer. Right? Then you have True Lies. Okay, good. The Mask, I think it gets a lot more attention than it deserves. But then you have Natural Born Killers, True Lies. I come to hate Forrest Gump now, but I was at a perfect age when I saw it originally. I was like, Forrest Gump is the best. And Speed. And that, like, those are movies that I'm like, okay, this is a high-low summer. This is a really interesting one where we are going back to the well, we're trying new things, but I like this summer overall because it's like, okay, there are certain things that should have worked better. Like Wolf should be a better movie. Shadow should be a better movie. Flintstones is tricky. Should be better, I guess. I hope.
But it's funny because I feel like I have a memory of going to see this movie with my dad, which will come as no shock to anyone because this is like dad juice, this movie. But I have really clear memories of seeing Speed twice, right? Like, and the fact
of course.
It was
Speed
the best.
Great.
And the fact that we were like every week or every other week going to see a movie for adults.
Well, yeah. Well, the best one too, and I feel like it's not a Die Hard but if my dad loved another movie that came out summer of 1994, Maverick.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Maverick is great.
Maverick is great. And Maverick is like right up. That's like dad juice. I mean, that is like, this is like, that's like calling back to their youth. And that was like but Maverick and Clear and Present Danger definitely are big dad energy movies.
Totally. And, especially with the like Richard Donner, Mel Gibson connection, like coming off of Lethal Weapon and Danny Glover cameo. I don't know if you guys remember Danny Glover's cameo saying,
loved it.
I'm too old for this shit. And just being like, this is... My dad lost his mind. It was like his Eras tour. It's like if Taylor Swift came out, my dad was like, this is like the perfect.
It's true. Now that I think about it and we're listing off all these movies, I'm like, me and my parents would go into the cinema every week or every 2 weeks. Now I'm lucky if I get out as a dad, like once a year to see Oppenheimer,
Oh my gosh. My kids, I gotta tell you this thing that happened to me. So I was with my my kids are sports kids. They love sports. And we like sports.
How old are your kids?
9 and 7.
Okay.
So my 9-year-old says to me, Dad, there's a kid on my team that reminds me of you. And I'm like, oh yeah? Why? And he goes, he likes movies. And I go, and? He goes, yeah. I go, it's not weird to like movies. Like, whatever. And I was like, whatever? Like, I can't wrap my head around like that my son thinks it's
an
weird
antiquated concept.
That I like movies. Movies, not like you like Disney movies, you like
just movies in general.
You like an art form. Yeah, I never felt so small. It was the worst thing my child could say to me, like, you like movies. Like, it was disdain.
Say a prayer for the youth
And when I said
America.
It's not weird to like it. And that was for me, it was the best part of a weekend was, going to the movies, renting a movie.
Yeah,
all that
totally.
stuff.
I have like such strong memories of like literally going to see like LA Confidential with my dad, the movie ending and him being like, let's go to the video store. What movie should we rent tonight? And just being like, that is like what life was. It was spending
my heart is like
hours at the video store in the 90s and him being like, just pick a movie, and me being like, I don't know if we should get Dr. No or From Russia with Love. Like, it's hard to make these decisions. It's unbelievable.
Dear.
Incredible.
Happy days.
Speaking
Happy
of
days.
the 90s, Phil, should we move on to our section, Die Hard DNA? Thank you. Yes.
Well, you need a little like guitar riff in there to
Exactly.
give me.
Or like a nice little
90s to the
piano,
max.
piano Jurassic Park theme.
So, this is where we just outline any of the some of the specific links between the film that we're covering and the Die Hard or the Die Hard series. So please chime in if you think of any more or if you have additional thoughts. The ones that I caught were the main one being Clear and Present Danger is the third film in the Jack Ryan franchise that was, of course, started by Die Hard helmer John McTiernan, who directed Hunt for Red October and put this franchise on the rails. We again have a family man action hero, an ordinary guy being thrown into this crazy situation. There's a dual helicopter insertion sequence, and I love that shit.
That's Philly special. Philly special, as we
that's my
call it.
jam.
Ding, ding, ding.
The bit of old school computer hacking. Love that. Love to see a computer with green digitization.
Real old school. The getting the password was one of my favorite parts of this movie.
That's
just like
so good. That and when he hits the print screen button repeatedly, oh man.
And yet that still feels current now.
Yes, never felt more pressure than trying to refill a paper printer. Come on.
It's so relatable.
Fantastic.
Harrison Ford, so relatable.
Fantastic. And then the last couple ones that were connected to Die Hard 2, your first entry into, your gateway drug into this world, with the drug war theme that comes up in both films. If you remember the general that's being transported in Die Hard 2, and the reporter literally says, like, I think this is the first victory in the war on drugs. And there's also the appearance of the actor Tom Bauer, who plays the quirky airport janitor Marvin in Die Hard 2, and appears here as the drunk helicopter pilot.
What I love about that guy is he's got to be like a Chicago theater actor, right? Like I don't know too much about his history. Colorado, yeah. But like he just feels like a guy who's doing like Lanford Wilson plays, and then the rest of the time is like, or is doing like great bit roles in action movies in the 90s.
Well, to me, it feels like he's one of those guys that you want to hang out on set with, like that.
Yep.
Like I've done many movies where you're like, oh shit, you've been in everything. And they're like, let me tell you a story about Marlon Brando. It's like, oh wait, you work with Marlon? It's like, yeah, I did his last movie. No one saw it, but here, it's like, it's one of those things. Like he's been in so much stuff. Great actor.
Yeah. The last point, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Paul. It has a deep suspicion of government and state power and state institutions, much like Die Hard. Would you?
Yes.
What do you think? Like, would you say that's fair?
I wouldn't say that Die Hard has it on its sleeve. I think that what Die Hard does interesting is like take a heist plot and kind of class it up a little bit. Like they show like this way of manipulating bearer bonds, and it was very much like, I think, this fear of the Japanese, right? Like taking over our buildings and taking, so I think that they're talking about like America being co-opted. But what I think is so interesting in Clear and Present Danger, and probably for the time, and why I think it made it a tougher rewatch for me, was this has been so explored now in shows like 24. And, and I think that that's just one. But this type of plot is so duplicated. And that maybe is the reason why this movie was successful. This movie was a hit, but this type of story feels like, oh, hack on a certain level. Like, right, it's like, oh, but the president is also involved. It goes all the way to the top, right? But it doesn't also have that parallax view conspiracy to it. It just feels bureaucratic. And I think that maybe that's the difference. Like, parallax view felt like there are people behind whispering.
We don't know who they are, right?
Yeah, this is just people in a hallway going like, I want to be ahead of this, and I'm power. It's very Tom Clancy. Like, this is real. This is not, I think they go through great lengths to show you how this could happen. This is not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Very interesting, analysis. And I think that it feels now like, the president being a source of suspicion is very normalized, and there's nothing fresh about it. But I actually think at the time, and we'll get to this in the next section, there'd been a long gap between those kind of Watergate influenced thrillers that you're referencing, Parallax View, Conversation, All the President's Men, obviously, which you exhaustively covered and beautifully analyzed on Unspooled. All of those kind of things. But then there's a long gap for the Reagan 80s, which tended to be pro-America, around America's back, and we're cocking the shotgun and we're kicking ass again. And then this book, of course, written in 1989, I think, when it was published. So it was sort of post Iran-Contra. But at the time in mainstream movies, I think the idea of having a president being a source of suspicion in a mainstream American film was actually something relatively new. Yeah. But we'll get into that when we get into the anatomy of an action movie right after this quick break.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
Okay, we're back. Let's jump into our section, Anatomy of an Action Movie, where we list the tenets. We live in a twilight world.
And there are no friends at dusk. Paul, you a
Tenet Hive? Tenet Hive?
Wait, I sadly drove out of Tenet in the movie theater. Yeah, we saw it in a drive-in.
Did you go to the drive-in here in L.A.?
Yes, we went to the drive-in. Yeah, I think I need to, well, maybe depending on who you ask, I do need to rewatch it or give it another shake because it was hard to really connect to it in a car. And I blame myself for that, but I didn't go back. I
saw it in probably the same drive-in as you did and was like, I give Nolan a lot of latitude, so I was like, all right, that was a tough hang in the car. It was also deep quarantine, so I hadn't left my house in 8 months. And then I went and saw it in the New Beverly in 35 millimeter, and I was like, okay, this kicks. This really, really works. It works
I think
great.
There's something about it where if I go back and watch it and I try not to make sense of it, I think I'll enjoy it more.
Absolutely.
And that is tricky because he's a naughty filmmaker, and I felt like that one is just a knot that you're not going to unravel, but yet it presents like every other one of his films that it's like, oh, but there's more. There's this and there's that. And it's like, ugh. It's like a frustrating Rubik's Cube. It's like, I appreciate the Rubik's Cube. I see the Rubik's Cube. But I have no intent to solve it, and then I'll be at peace with the Rubik's Cube. So maybe that's how I should do it.
That is a good philosophy. Fair. And I mean, when you see it 8 or 9 times, you sort of stop worrying about that aspect of it.
And by the way, and I want, and we're talking about dad movies, we're talking about complicated movies. Like, there should be movies like this. And there should be more tenets. There should, I'm not asking for things to be dumbed down. I'm just saying it's not one of my top Nolan's, and that, but I appreciate and respect him for what he does. And I'll go out on a line just to show you that I do have a different Nolan opinion. I really liked Interstellar.
Me too.
When I saw Interstellar, it worked for me, and I was like, I really think this movie's beautiful. And I could talk to people who are like, oh my God, like, oh, that movie. So it's like, I think a great director will have that. It's like, okay, rum raisin's not my favorite flavor, but I respect it as a flavor.
Well, you'll appreciate this as a dad, so will Phil. When I saw it in IMAX, I was like, okay, cool. That was like an interesting movie when it came out. And then recently I was on a flight to New York and I put it on and I was sitting next to my 5-year-old daughter and she was just like, can I have more snacks? And I'm like literally sobbing watching this movie with my daughter next to me because I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, like it really, maybe it hits different. I think that's how I feel about it all the time.
We just had a kid when I saw it. It was one of the first movies back, and so I really felt it. I mean, and then a little while after I just remember it had Amy Adams, Jeremy Renner. It's the alien one where they have to speak in like they're drawing pictures.
Arrival?
Yes. Those are these movies that you sometimes when you're in a state and you check in, you're like, wow, okay. Yeah, like this, it's like, and I don't know, and sometimes I don't want to go back. The same way I feel about Dumb and Dumber. I love Dumb and Dumber. I saw it. I don't ever want to see it again because if it's not as funny as I thought it was, it will.
You're preserving the memory. There's a lot of movies that I love that I don't want to go back to for that exact same reason.
Yeah,
where you're like, it was perfect, and I'm, it's 20 years ago or whatever the case is, and why ruin it? Why ruin my memories?
Unless it's Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, which I recommend watching every Friday night.
Yeah,
and it holds up.
That you have to.
Fridays are for that. Saturdays are Cobra and Phil's house.
Exactly.
That's how we roll.
But by the way, I have to say this. I actually just recently showed my kids Happy Gilmore, the golf one, and they went crazy for it. They went bonkers. And there was something so fun to watching them lose their mind at a comedy that I lost my mind at as a kid. And that was one of the best moments of parenting ever, because it was sort of like, oh, what we both at the, not the same age because I was older, but it was like just to see that connection. And I love a comedy that can work. Like the same thing for Home Alone. Like I've appreciate Home Alone on such a deeper, like when it came out, I was like, this is a kid's movie. I don't like kids movies. And now I put Home Alone up on a giant pedestal. I think it's one of John Hughes' best. There's something really great about so much good stuff in that movie.
I'd love to talk to you about that, actually, and maybe we could talk about this separately because I know that you have a theory about it being a Die Hard movie.
I do.
I would love to discuss that with you, perhaps at a later date.
Yes. Oh, by the way, bring me back. My second episode will be Home Alone is Die Hard.
Yes.
That is
Christmas special.
I will go.
You just saved me having to beg you to do that.
Oh, it is truly the one thing that I felt like I made a quick YouTube video about it or something, and I did not get to really dig in. I'd love to get out the research and let's break it all down.
Quick behind the scenes, when we reached out to you, Phil was like, I think we could ask them to do Home Alone next. And I was like, let's see.
Oh,
Christmas special.
I would do it. I would do it 100%.
Amazing.
Let's do it.
Oh,
all right. Well, our first tenet of Anatomy of an Action movie is the premise. And the premise of Clear and Present Danger is thus. After a close friend is murdered by international drug traffickers, the vengeful U.S. president tacitly instructs his national security team to launch a series of secret military strikes against the parties deemed responsible. And soon, CIA analyst turned deputy director Jack Ryan discovers himself to be an unwitting pawn in a covert illegal war between American paramilitary forces and the Colombian drug cartels. As the carnage escalates, Ryan must find a way to quell the bloodshed and expose the corruption at the heart of his own government. The ticking clock, which comes up later in the story, is when the American paramilitary forces are ultimately betrayed by the national security officials and abandoned behind enemy lines. Can Ryan formulate a plan to rescue them before it's too late? Now, we had a question for you about this because the narrative of the film, as we alluded to, has been filtered through a number of people with differing political views. We've got the likes of Tom Clancy, John Milius on one end of the spectrum, then there's other folks such as Philip Noyce and Steven Zalian and Harrison Ford. Do we think this movie has a coherent political point of view or message?
Well, to me, I think that what I found funny about this movie is we spend so much time trying to justify the point of view, but now this point of view is so ingrained within us. So I think that they do a great job of, to your point earlier, this is new. For most people, like, oh, wow, the president could be culpable in this. Or we're seeing how the presidency works in these small ways. Like I love that moment where Harrison Ford tells the president, "Don't say you don't know him. Say you don't say you were his friend. Say you guys were the best of friends." Right? Like these little ideas of, and when the photographer's in there taking a picture, or how they set him up on trial to take the fall. And we've come out of Oliver North at this point. Like we understand there's something going on. But I think this movie, Milius, I think especially, is coming in. I think this whole writers team is coming in because Tom Clancy's like, you didn't do me right on Patriot Games. Like you made it not like my book.
It has Prince Charles and Jack Ryan teaming up to be like firing machine guns on a speedboat.
What?
It's lunacy.
It's crazy.
Wow.
And so I feel like they really tried to lean into, and I think for a while, like Tom Clancy's stuff was called like technobabble, but there is like, a lot of details about helicopters and guns and things like that. It's what Stephen King is to, describing what a dog looks like. They'll do for like a helicopter, So I felt like, I feel like the premise is simple, but they spend a long time laying it out. And I'm like, got it, guys, I got it. Like, and it's not character development either. It's like, he's a Boy Scout, these guys aren't, and here's the machinations. But it's just like, and whenever there's like investigation, it's so quick. It's so quick. It's like you want to, like that first coffee scene with Harrison Ford and Willem Dafoe, where he's like, I would have this coffee, have that. It's like, it's great, it's cool, but I just feel like they're doing a lot of the work of like a book. Like they I feel like the pacing is off a little bit, and I think that's an attempt to make sure that we really lay out the playing field to get to the action of that. The set pieces that they have.
Did you enjoy the rewatch, or was it kind of like felt a little long and laborious?
I didn't love it. No,
Yeah.
It's like I appreciated aspects of it, and really what I appreciated was like it has every single one of my favorite actors in it. I was like, whoa,
yeah.
Whoa. So that was really cool. I mean, and I don't want to be at all taking anything away, but there's something about this one actor in the film that I love so much. It's the number, like not the number two, but his name is I think it's Joaquin Alameda. He, to me, I always think of him as the Spanish Phil Hartman. Whenever I see him, I can't think of it and not like. I look at him, I'm like, this is Phil Hartman. This is like the Spanish version of Phil Hartman. Yeah. but I love the character, so I was enjoying watching it. It just felt, it was like, okay. All right, like it just felt like the movie just wasn't starting.
It's so funny because my prep for this episode was, listening to your episode on Apocalypse Now, because I wanted to get a little Milius spilled, so to speak, and then I watched the Milius documentary, and I know he's sort of the guy that I know the least of that sort of generation of filmmakers. So it was really interesting to watch that and get his point of view, and I feel like Clancy was very much, two things that were interesting about that was a lot that's interesting about that documentary. One is that Sean Connery insisted that Milius rewrite anything he did. So when he got the part in Hunt for Red October, he was like, I want more speeches, call Milius. I want him to rewrite these for me. And which is like, what a compliment, like kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I found just so interesting is that Clancy wanted him on Clear and Present Danger. And I feel like you can feel Milius in those early scenes so much with the amount of table setting and getting us there. It feels novelistic. When I pressed play on it, so a funny fact is that I've seen this movie twice in the last year. The first was literally when my wife we were in the hospital having our second baby. I was watching it on my phone. So I'd just re-seen it and I was just like, oh, this is perfect dad stuff. Like this is a great, cool, calm movie to watch for me. While the baby's coming. And then I rewatched it last night. And both times I was like, this is 141 minutes? Like, I can't believe it's this long. And I had a great time revisiting it, but it feels novelistic in some ways that are overwhelming in detail, and that techno thriller thing that Clancy does. Like, it's heavy and long and dense.
Yeah, I will say also we did an episode on Conan the Barbarian on Unspooled, which we really kind of got into Milius. And I think what's interesting about Milius is he can ape anything. I know he's talked about that. Like he started reading, like he's a surfer, but he could talk about like he could write in any style. So I feel like he can capture voice. And, to your point about Sean Connery, like Sean Connery, I believe the argument was like, oh, the movie is too American, like make this more Russian. And, and so he was able to capture that. And I feel like there's something interesting about him because I think that he's got this, like, not hippie, but like this kind of like he kind of walks on both sides. Like it's like a libertarian, right? Like that energy, right? It's like, yeah, I got 10 guns and I believe everyone should get a COVID shot. Like, I don't know, but it's like
well, he keeps describing himself in the documentary as a Zen anarchist.
Yes,
right.
That works.
So it's like he's a surfer guy that has like these really militant beliefs and kind of made Red Dawn. I mean, that feels like a mission statement for a certain type of filmmaker, right? I'm going to make Red Dawn, but then, turns around and one of the things that's interesting in the documentary is at one moment his son is like, he was like he was viewed as a Republican in Hollywood at that time. But if you talk to him now, it would feel different. Like he wouldn't be the same kind of guy. He's really waffled in sort of who he is because you can't pin him down. He's complicated.
There's a real muscularity to his dialogue as well, which I think he does seem, there's something sort of, he probably wouldn't like to be portrayed this way, but I think there is something scholarly about him, but he presents himself as this sort of like very, macho kind of earthy guy, but I think he's actually very, very intelligent. And I like the combination of his swagger but talking about like politics or talking about foreign policy. And to me, there are certain lines in this film that pop of like, that's Emilius line. That feels like his voice. And he was actually on set. Even though he was originally going to do it with McTiernan, then they decided, actually, no, we're going to do Patriot Games as the sequel to Hunt for Red October. So McTiernan drops out. Milius' script is rewritten by these other writers, but Milius is brought on set and oversaw and designed the iconic the convoy ambush sequence.
Beautiful. I mean,
Amazing.
That's probably the best sequence. Yeah.
So speaking of what you were saying about Joaquim de Almeida, this film has several villains. So when we transition to talking about the villains, because as we were just sort of saying, a lot of these action movies we've looked at so far, we do it in chronological order on this show. So we've gone from 1988 Die Hard and a track through now to 1994, which is like basically 3 different presidencies. We've had Reagan, Poppy Bush. Now we're in the Clinton era. The stories have typically been up to this point an American hero fighting the other of some crime, which is usually a Brit, by the way, like Charles Passenger 57.
This podcast is reconciliation. It's fixing that.
Lithgow playing a sort of a Brit in Cliffhanger, Charles Dance in Last Action Hero, or basically someone that's non-American is like threatening the homeland. They're kind of overcoming the monster type stories at their fundamental level. This one's interesting because it's going in a different direction, and there's a bunch of different villains. 2 from the cartel, Joaquim de Almeida as the cartel intelligence officer Felix Cortez. He's actually Portuguese. He's playing a Cuban. Then you've got Miguel Sandoval as Ernesto Escobedo, based quite clearly on Pablo Escobar. Great actor. And then you've got our squad of Henry Czerny as the CIA Deputy Director of Operations, Robert Ritter. I have so much to say about him. I love him in this. Harris Yulin, who Liam is similarly obsessed with, as the National Security Advisor, James Cutter. And then Donald Moffet as the President, Edward Bennett. Paul, who or what is the real villain of this story, in your opinion?
Well, to me, I think that this movie is using the scope of the war on drugs to hide a very personal story. And I think that that's what's really interesting about it, right? Because it isn't anything about the war on drugs. This is about the president getting revenge because his friend was murdered, right? And his friend was into some bad stuff. And I think what further complicates it is that Jack Ryan then gets in and goes, well, hold on one second. Like, I thought we're doing a war on drugs. Like, I think that's the interesting, like the war on drugs is there. And I think what this movie is saying is, oh, if we wanted to be proactive, we could win the war on drugs. We don't care to be proactive. Like, there's a handshake agreement here that we are all just minding our time. The only reason why we're involved, the only reason why we're moving forward on this is because the president needs action taken for revenge. This is not a movie where it's like, God damn it, the war on drugs is terrible. And I think that that's the smartest and most interesting thing about this movie. It's used as a cover because people won't care, and they're going to sensationalize the murders that they have to justify more murders. They're going to kill Jack Ryan, or the plan is to kill Jack Ryan too, to then, at one point, it's collateral damage that only helps the gain of the president getting his revenge, right? And it's like, and yes, there are all these other things. So, I mean, if you want to say that there are villains, I would argue that Joaquin Alameda is the biggest villain because he is the one that's playing both sides, right? He gets caught, like he is the turncoat, but not to Jack Ryan, he's to his boss, like that facilitates I think the downfall of the entire film.
Yeah, and there's sort of gradations of evil as well amongst these different characters, and they're all kind of amoral or immoral in different ways. And Ryan, the Boy Scout, has to sort of navigate that, and to some extent gets some of his black and white worldview, I think, becomes a little more gray, and which is something that Ritter brings up. He's saying the world is gray.
Kind of the thesis statement of the movie at some point in it, right? I think it's interesting because, there's a version of this now, if it were made now, that's like a 9-part Netflix series that's literally the part they're doing that with Jack Ryan right now anyways. Right. And, you would get, I appreciate this as a 2-hour and 20-minute movie. I think it really works. And I appreciate, like what you said, Phil, the degradations of evil. You have the sort of like mid-level government functionaries, or maybe higher up, like a Ritter played by Henry Czerny, who's kind of like twisting his mustache evil, but is absolutely incredible when he just the look, the withering looks he gives Harrison Ford when they're in the funeral or whatever. And then the Harris Yulin character, who I think he's an amazing actor. And one of the things I love so much about him in this movie is like, he's never quite sure that he's doing the right thing. Most of the time he knows he's doing the wrong thing. And this is a good movie of close-ups. Like, there's a lot of good shots of dad's thinking in this movie, is the way I would describe it. And Harris Yulin just has these moments where he's hunched over thinking about what he's doing, and you see it play out in this really interesting way. So it's like so compelling to watch all these guys at different degradations of evil and not quite knowing who the ultimate villain is. To me, it feels like it's the president, and I feel like that was kind of a revelation at the time, but now it feels relatively tame, right? But that last scene between him and Ford is incredible.
Yeah, and they even used that in the marketing, which was interesting. If you remember, that was like front and center of the trailer and all the BTS stuff that came out around that time, and it's the last scene of the film. Well, let's talk about Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan. And you just mentioned the fact that there's an Amazon series where John Krasinski is playing this role, and it's been played by Chris Pine and Ben Affleck and Alec Baldwin. What is it about Harrison Ford's take on this character, in your opinion, that is so effective?
I mean, Harrison Ford to me is this undefinable thing or not undefinable, but it's very hard to replicate. He is someone that I think men find compelling, but not threatening. It's like, oh, I like this guy. And he's not like Stallone or Schwarzenegger. He's not built to a degree where you're like, this is ridiculous. He is living. I think that many straight men can see themselves as this guy. Like, I like this guy. And then conversely, he's super sexy dude, right? He's like, and I think that there's a charm to that. I think that even in all of his roles, but like his most famous roles, he's not the guy who's going to beat you down with his fists. He is charming. He's cocky. It's so much more attitude. And, it's interesting in this because he's so low status. And I was like, oh, wow, this is funny. I haven't seen Harrison Ford like this low status in a while, almost like, like he's nervous in the Oval Office. And I like that. And, of course, regarding Henry and things like that. But I just think that we are constantly chasing who is the next Harrison Ford. And we try to put people up. I think, Chris Pratt falls into that camp a little bit at a certain point. And it was like, oh, we like him. He's funny. It's good. He's cute, but Sarah Harrison Ford is like a man, but a man in a way that, or traditional, like what you think of like a man is, but he's like less dangerous than Michael Douglas. Like Michael Douglas seems like, like, there's these like different levels there, but it's at the same time, like I buy Harrison Ford in Mexico carrying a machine gun more than I do Michael Douglas. So it's like a weird thing of like, he can carry himself with more weight, but he's accessible but not scary, but also
he doesn't have the dangerous sexuality that Michael Douglas has that feels a little
especially
transgressive, right? Like, and a little bit like, I don't know if I should like a lot of the Michael Douglas characters that he played were morally complex or just straight up like kind of bad dudes, especially in Basic Instinct, where he's like killed a tourist and he's like an alcoholic and he's a cocaine addict, even though he's like a law enforcement officer, and he's involved with a murder suspect, and then Fatal Attraction and and then Wall Street, right? But Harrison Ford rarely did that until later in his career. He got a little more experimental, but for the most part, he was pretty like morally upstanding. He reads as decent and all-American somehow, right?
Well, it's also mid-period Ford. This is mid-period Ford, right? So he's past, to some extent, Han Solo. He's just done his last Indiana Jones movies 5 years before. And like, we're suddenly getting... This, by the way, is honestly one of my favorite Fords. This could be nostalgia talking entirely, but I love him in this movie. I love him as the sort of like moderate man. And like at home, he's kind of the... Where are my keys? And then at work, he's like this analyst and very thoughtful, like, and then he shows up, to your point, Paul, late in the movie in a windbreaker, button-down shirt and jeans, and you're like, that's the greatest looking man that's ever lived. Like with the sunglasses, you're just like, holy crap, this fit is unbelievable. And he's 52 years old. And so to me, it's like he's doing this thing where he still is making these franchise movies, but he's playing a family man. He's doing, kind of a different take. It's not dangerous like Mosquito Coast. It's not smoldering like Witness, but it's just like I'm in my mid-period and I can kind of get away with things.
It's age appropriate as well, right?
True.
Well, I also think he brings baggage with him, right? Like, so we just saw him in The Fugitive in 1993, right? And that's a great movie. And so we are prone to be rooting for this guy. And that's something that's interesting too. Like, I think the best movie stars, and movie stars is a tricky word to define, right? Because it's like Denzel Washington to me is a movie star. Like Tom Cruise is a movie star. You're going to see them and you're getting a version of them that you already know. Like, what you're getting. And oftentimes when that switches up, you see it with Jim Carrey or things like that. Like, people go, hey, we don't like that. Like, you're too different, but we'll go with Harrison Ford. It's like, oh, we like Harrison Ford. So now he's a president. Now he's a guy on the run. Now he's a this, but I think he carries that baggage really nicely. And I think that you're right. This mid-period of him is a really interesting... This is where he's in his sweetest spot, in many respects. I mean, this is really like Air Force One is going to come out a couple years later. And like, that may be the end of this run. It's like, maybe it started like Working Girl and goes through, it's like, it's an interesting, just like you said, mid-period where it's like, I'm in the zone. I'm playing roughly the same type of person, flustered. I mean, that's the other thing. He's flustered. He's constantly flustered in this.
It's such an interesting point you make about him being low status, because he's kind of clueless as to what's going on during the entire, for 80% of this film,
But he also has that thing that Bruce Willis has in Die Hard, where he can read a situation. Like when he reads the ambush, he kind of goes, wait, I've not seen that motorcycle guy before. Why is this guy making eye contact with me? Why are the women closing the doors and pulling in the windows? Like, he's like a real person in the sense that people are different people at work than they are at home. And it's so fleshed out, right? In the sense that, like, as an actor, he inhibits this reality in the same way that, like, Harrison Ford can't help but be the greatest puncher and tackler in movie history. He tackles Joaquin de Alameda and, like, it's a football tackle. This is a guy who, like, knows how to use his body. And it's always just so impressive to me how he's able to kind of just be two types of people in the movie, but always maintain that fluster or that kind of, like, thoughtful anxiety that you see throughout the course of the movie.
I think that he captures, and this is, Die Hard, every man. What would I do in this situation? He is incredibly smart, but he's not too smart. He is incredibly strong, but he's not too strong, right? And in that sequence, that brilliant, that noise, or I should say that noise sequence, of getting caught in that ambush. he's flustered as hell, right? And you see that even in Raiders of the Lost Ark, like he's not above it. Like The Rock is like, whew, and I think that that's what people miss. It's like, oh, shrug it off. Like he's shaken when he comes home to his wife. He's shaken. Like and like you can tell his wife is. I like the relationship with his wife. She doesn't have much to do, Ann Archer, but I like Ann Archer. But but like you could tell she's smart. Like she's not arm candy. Also, it's like just seems like there's a good relationship. She's super smart. He's smart. They're like a little couple just running around doing their stuff.
Mm-hmm. You believe them. You believe them the whole time.
And I think that to me is the same thing with John McClane. John McClane's not the smartest cop. He's not the best cop. He's not. He is just thinking it two steps further, or you are allowed into the thought process. Like and not to make it all a comparison to The Rock, because I do love The Rock, but I think there's a tendency in action movies to be like, oh God, okay, I'm going to get this fire hose, I'm going to tie this around here, I'm going to do this, and boom. Like there's no, like it's like, oh, like you already knew that's already in your mental Rolodex of things to do, where like I think that these movies always take you like 4 steps back and go like, okay, I'm freaked out. Oh, okay, what am I looking at? Okay, I'm looking at that. Okay, I'm looking at that. I'm putting it together. I'm putting it together. We're on the journey of them becoming the hero instead of expecting them to become the hero. I think that that's a very subtle difference, but Die Hard really does a great job of it. Like it's like, okay, I'm taking off. It's like we feel him running on that glass. Most people we wouldn't feel that, but it's because we set it. We just got to set up. We got to set up those moments to have those emotional connections. I think that, and that's what we miss a lot in modern day action, in my opinion.
Well, something that we talked about a little bit with Patriot Games and the Fugitive is Ford's ability to act within action scenes. There's something about how expressive he is, that he's able to sort of bring you into his heart and soul a little bit while he's running from an explosion like that. There's a famous shot that they used to close out the trailer in this film where he's running from the convoy and then there's an explosion behind him and the shoulder of his suit is ripped and he does this sort of dramatic fall, but he's still like he's so expressive. You see him thinking, you see him feeling. It doesn't feel like a green screen or there's a sort of, like you're saying with some of the Dwayne Johnson type stuff, where there can also be a detached irony to what's going on, and it's the stakes don't have the same kind of muscularity to them. Speaking of the action, do you have a favorite action scene or sequence in this movie? Because there's a few good ones.
Yeah, I mean, that last half hour, it's so interesting. If you look on Wikipedia, it's like 3 lines of the plot description is really the last 40 minutes of the movie, right? And there's so much going on there. I think one of the things that makes this movie, like, I guess I would say this: Patriot Games is a better movie as far as plotting and pace, but this is a better movie because of the characters. And when Willem Dafoe's on screen, it's pretty electric. It's really fun to watch. And that last half hour, it's like that's our dessert. Like, have you earned it? You've earned it. You've sat here for 2 hours. You took your history lesson. And now you can go watch some ass kicking and running around and, sniper shots. I would say that my favorite action scene in the movie, and I don't know if you can qualify as an action scene, but let's see, is Willem Dafoe recruiting the sniper. I love that scene. I love that scene because, yes, I mean, there are some great set pieces, but that's just like a real patient, great way to set up this amazing payoff at the end. But also, I think it like brings you into, oh shit, like this is like at a level, like the way that the bullet hits that target, like ding, and it's like, and the way he's moving, and I just love that sequence. I think that sequence is really well done. It's not tension, like, because no one's gonna get killed, but it's like, where is he? What's going on? Why we feel that nervousness or that confusion? I don't know. I think it's really an underappreciated moment in that movie.
I love that sequence too, but I did have a question, which is, where did he get the Whopper from, or the McDonald's? Where did he get that from?
Let's not underestimate Raymond Cruz, one of the unsung heroes of this film.
Clark Gregg is in that scene as well, by the way. Like,
yes,
Clark Gregg is in that scene. No, the cast in that scene, everyone in that movie has become a big deal. My personal favorite, it's funny, earlier you mentioned Pakula. And I feel like if this movie ever approaches a Pakula kind of level, it's the juxtaposition of the funeral with the pomp and circumstance against the slaughter of the soldiers. And I remember watching it in the hospital while my wife was like laboring, being like, holy shit. Like, this is pretty cynical. This is a pretty cynical look at America right now. And I kind of, kind of surprised me that a movie that, first of all, I didn't understand that at all when I was 14 when this movie came out. But now as an adult, I was like, wow, this is heavy. And it feels to me very Clancy-esque, like a real commitment to that bit and that kind of 70s, not paranoia per se, but like there's something rotten at the core here that didn't feel like it was inhabiting a lot of movies in this era. I mean, True Lies is 3 weeks before this, right? Which, it's not as nuanced when it comes to, international policy and foreign relations.
What I would argue is, and I think it's a couple years after, but Wag the Dog kind of comes similar to this. Like, it's a different type of movie, but it's like, it's political machinations. It's putting people in positions. It's politics, right? It's really showing politics. And I think that's, to me, what this is the elevated action movie. It's an action movie that could actually happen. And I think that like this comes at a time when you talk about True Lies. Like, True Lies is just American James Bond. And I don't say that dismissively, but that's what it is. It's
one of the best things about it is Schwarzenegger absolutely pulls it off. He's incredible in it, right?
And he also is playing a little bit lower status there, too. I like when Schwarzenegger plays lower status, but I think he could do it really well. But I do think that this is like, it's like smart action. Like, you can go away from the theater going like, I didn't just watch an action movie. I watched a global political thriller, and everything I saw here could, as a matter of fact, it could, and I think, but that's okay. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. And I think it is engaging. And I think that it also relies heavily on our actors. Like, I think that this movie wouldn't have any resonance if it wasn't for the great acting and the buildup, even though I found the buildup to be a little bit like, I think my issue with this movie is the plot is very right? If you really were to take the plot, like, there's a lot of machinations to get to the plot, but like, if you really drove it down, it's like president's friends killed, president's like, let's get revenge, right? And meanwhile, conversely, there's like a little thing going on between like the head drug cartel guy and his number two, and then we throw Harrison Ford in the mix, who is like, oh, wait a second. This isn't all, he's like he's basically unraveling the two plot lines. Like, but the plot lines it's not a complex movie. It's like, it's very base, and it's happenstance too. Like, like the answering machine and the, like him killing her so blatantly. Like, I'm like, oh, that's a real convenient kill that they did. And I don't even understand why she was killed, but
no, it's confusing,
but,
anyway. but it's dreadful. It's stressful to watch that scene because you know what.
Yes. Oh,
it's
great,
coming.
Yeah.
Like, no, absolutely. Like, it's kind of crazy. One thing I read was that the studio was pretty unhappy with the first draft of this because Ford didn't show up until 45 minutes into the movie.
Wow.
Because Milius was really doing this world building. So the stuff with the guys in Colombia and then the kind of like scandal of it was really, and all of a sudden Ford showed up like an hour into probably what was a 3.5, 4 hour, length draft, right? And like they were like, no, like you have to, and I think that's when Zalian got brought in to sort of like, streamline it, who's an incredible screenwriter when it comes to that kind of stuff, like bringing it all together. And I just think it'd been wild if this movie had been released with Harrison Ford on the poster and an American flag, and he doesn't show up for 45 minutes
just not in it.
into the movie.
It's amazing. I mean, and by the way, it's a sequel.
Right, totally.
That's the other thing too. It's like we don't need this much world building. Yeah. It's a sequel. We already are familiar with the characters.
Right, absolutely.
It's interesting.
I do find it so funny here too. Like, it's like the way they get rid of James Earl Jones so quickly. It's like he basically, gets cancer and then like, well, now you live in the hospital. Like, you just you're like, it's like, I'm diagnosed. You're never going home. Like, I thought that was an interesting thing. It wasn't like he wasn't on they get him out of there. It's like, oh yeah, I was a little sick. Cancer. All right, and it's like, and you're in. And it's like, and again, we just kind of move him to the right positions to get in the right world. But I love that. I love the sequences with Harrison Ford walking through the boat, and there's something fun about having an inner look at what the White House does. Like you're feeling like you're like, oh my gosh, like I just went to the White House when I was doing a tour with How Did This Get Made? My friend works for NASA, and he said, "You want to come do a White House tour?"
Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" And it was amazing. We got to go inside, and I walked inside, and I got to stand. Basically, it's like the way that they rope off a museum. There's a rope over the Oval Office, and just to stand on that threshold at the door, looking in. It's cool. It's amazing. It's like, whoa. I mean, you can't take pictures, and it just feels very special. And I feel like that's what this movie is doing a really great job of. It's you're feeling this like, oh wow, and it because it's so dry. It's like must be what it's like. Oh, it's not bombastic. It's very small. It's like, and I feel like that's really cool too. I think we've seen a lot more of that, but that is. I still felt that in those scenes.
It's also the golden age for that kind of stuff because you had American President, around the same time, Dave, the Kevin Kline movie.
Yes,
like, where you feel like the White House was like a place you hung out in movies in the 90s. And, now I can't think of well, Oppenheimer has a sequence like that, but you're not seeing it as commonly.
Yeah.
But should we put on our tuxedos?
Yes.
Did you bring your tuxedo?
Let's put them on.
We're going
put it
to.
on, yeah.
We have to put on our ill-fitting government bureaucratic suits. That's what we have to do. The pants are a little too long. The tie's a little too tied a little too short. That's kind of the vibe. That's what we're looking for here.
Because we're going to the Die Hard Oscars, a.k.a. the Action Movie Awards. So our first category is the John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. So I'm going to list a few of my nominees, but if you have some,
I got mine ready to go.
Okay, great.
Wow. You guys are better than me, man.
The essence of the film, in my opinion, was Jim Greer's line, James Earl Jones' line, where he said, "You want to know about politics in Washington? 4 words. Watch your back, Jeff."
Ooh, I like that.
That was on T-shirts as well. I remember for promotional stuff.
Really?
Watch your back, Jack. I remember that.
Wow.
And then there's the old, "How dare you come in here like some kind of junkyard dog?
I'm the president of the
United States."
Abe Lincoln. Good stuff.
"How dare you, sir?" And then basically pretty much anything that Henry Czerny says, which I think is like so many amazing lines just with his delivery of them.
Has that
like,
man aged a day?
He's amazing. He's so good in this. They want what every first-term administration wants. A second term.
Oh, that's a great one.
You weren't kept out of it. You're neck deep in it. You went to Congress and got the money for it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Even the way he says that, funnily enough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. His
so
just
good.
line delivery is just exquisite. I love him in this movie. So yeah, I could go on all day with his dialogue, but you already had one in your breast pocket. Paul.
Well,
what was your,
this one is like, "Give me my tape recorder."
And get off my plane.
Well, by the way, he does actually have a plane line here. He's like, "Get off my chopper." It's my chopper. But it was such a funny thing to be like, you're in this high stake mode, like, "Get me my tape recorder."
Those things weren't cheap, man. He made a government salary. It's not a line, but one of my favorite moments is when the woman approaches him in the bar in Colombia, and he goes, "Oh no, thank you." Like he's just such a dad. Like he just can't function. "Oh no, thank you." Oh, it's so good. What's the best line? I like when Czerny says "boom" and he bites the carrot before the bomb hits the.
I like that.
Colombian. It's incredible stuff. Incredible.
All right. The Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film.
So many
my
people.
nominees,
It's gonna be like 15
a lot
people.
A lot of choices. My nominees are Willem Dafoe as John Clark.
Yes.
James Earl Jones as Jim Greer, Admiral Jim Greer. Greg German popping up as Petey, the quirky CIA code hacker.
Great one.
The aforementioned Raymond Cruz as the wily military sniper Domingo
Amazing.
Chavez. And of course, Henry Czerny as CIA Deputy Director of Operations Robert Ritter. Those are my 5 noms. Thoughts? Additions?
Well,
picks?
I mean, look, I think that the easy answer is obviously Willem Dafoe is fantastic in this. I also think, James Earl Jones brings a gravitas to this whole thing that when he's on screen, I'm excited to see him. He doesn't really have to do that much. And I think what's interesting about him in this role is, and you often don't see this, it's like they clearly like, we don't have much for you, but we need you. We need you to be here. And he does. Like he shows up and I think delivers what he needs to do. But if we're talking about stealing a movie, you can't go further than the person who sold the movie, the president, Donald Moffet. I mean, that is, like this movie was basically that's the scene we're coming to see is Harrison Ford v. the president. And there's something really interesting about him because he plays it really dumb and also very vindictive. I think it's a good performance, across the board. I like that one.
Interesting.
I have to give a quick shout out to Miguel Sandoval as Ernesto Escobedo because
he's great.
He's just such a good actor, and like every time I watch it, I get excited about his scenes, and he kind of provides a comic relief despite the severity of the situation. Like he's the right pitch, sort of ridiculous. He reminds me a little bit of Last Action Hero, the villain in that movie, not Charles Dance, but the guy Charles Dance reports to. I forget who it is. He shows up like every few minutes. I think. Anthony Quinn, you're right. Yeah. He shows up every few minutes and you're like, great, that was cool. But he just walks away with it. I think he's really good. And Greg German. I mean, there's so many good choices here. Raymond Cruz. I can't pick one. Paul, I had a question for you, which is, as an actor, is there a part in this movie besides maybe Harrison Ford that you'd be like, God, I'd love to play this part?
Well, I always look at that and I'm like, oh, what would it be fun? And I'm thinking about my age. What would I be right for? It's like, because I think I play a little bit younger than I actually am, though, too. Like, but there's like, I mean, look, I'll go for the Greg German part. It's a very, it's like, that's the easy, the guy on the computer. I love a little part like that. I feel like that probably, but what I would love to play is, and now I'm going to forget his name.
You can say Harrison Ford. It's okay.
No. Because like Harrison Ford is fine. Like that's fine. But I kind of like his, why am I forgetting his name? But the nemesis, Harrison Ford's nemesis, the guy who's right. That's a great part. It's a really interesting part because it's like he is selfish and you get to do these scenes against Harrison Ford. And I feel like there's some good stuff in there. I don't know. I like that part.
That's a really good part.
It's interesting just on that point. One of the things that occurred to me about Henry Czerny is that in the two biggest films that he did in this time, he's going toe-to-toe with Harrison Ford and Tom Cruise. Like in his most iconic scenes. Yeah. Like he's having a verbal boxing match with two of the most charismatic and iconic movie stars. That's true. No mean feat, right? To go against those guys and hold your own.
There's something about his look too, and I think that like Henry Czerny, like, and again, because he doesn't look older, and he is a bureaucrat. Like you look at him, and you go like, I get it. I get who this guy is. It's actually really interesting because I feel like Willem Dafoe is a lot cooler than we know. Like Willem Dafoe's kind of not devolved, but like kind of found himself. And like he wouldn't be this kind of clean cut. Like there's something interesting about him. Like he's cleaner. But when you see him in this movie, man, like Henry Czerny, it's like you get it. I know who he is. I get that guy. I get that look. It's a million of those guys behind the people that I actually care about in Washington, and I think that that's what brings him. I don't know. I think that you bring baggage to him, and I think that that's good.
He'd be my pick, by the way, for stealing the film, just because I think he makes the strongest impression. But it is a terrific ensemble cast. Did you have a pick, Liam, or should we move on to the next category?
Oh boy, just to be different, I'm going to go with Raymond Cruz. I love Raymond Cruz. He had such a great career in this time, and like he's still, his biggest part's going to come in Breaking Bad, right? Like he's still a few years away from really, but I love him, and I love seeing him in a movie, and he's makes such an impression.
All right. The Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie.
A lot of choices here, too. Lots of dicks in this movie.
I've got Harris Yulin as National Security Advisor James Cutter, Donald Moffet as the President Edward Bennett, and Henry Czerny again as Robert Ritter. That's right, he's nominated in two categories.
Yeah, I mean, Henry Czerny is the easy one, right? Yeah. So that's a good, it's a good one.
It's a clean choice.
I mean, I'll go out of the box. I don't even know this actor's name, but the guy who goes, "Oh, we don't rent that helicopter. We sell them."
$2 million. So good. Yeah, you can just put a deposit down. $2 million.
That cameo.
So
well, you were a Harris Yulin like guy, right, Liam? Like you were really digging him in this
I really like him in this movie. I think he also does the bureaucrat really well. I also think children of the 90s have a strong memory of him as the judge in Ghostbusters 2.
Yes,
like,
of course.
He's imprinted in my mind, and I think One thing that's nice about revisiting movies as you get older is that you start to see you really start to see acting. So when you're a kid and you see a movie and you don't have a sense of technique or whatever, to then go back and watch someone move their eyes on camera and how much that conveys. I mean, I never get tired of watching really, really good actors, and the actors are great, and he's great in this movie.
Well, this is like a perfect example of great character actors filling an ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, going back to Oppenheimer and Die Hard, these are movies that are chock full of great actors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're great actors because their careers all really launch from this. Like, that's why they're in every episode. They're in Breaking Bad. They're in 24. They are in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, when you need to go get somebody, these people have created this. I love a character. To me, that is the most fun people you're going to get to see, because they're going to pop up. And Harris Yulin, you got him in Scarface, you have him in Training Day, Ghostbusters 2. It's like he pops up, and it's like you can go,
I completely forgot he was in Training Day. He's in that scene with Tom Berenger, right?
He's one of the three
Holy
wise men.
Crap. Yeah.
To me, he's great at just playing this old whore in this movie. You know what I mean? Just someone whose soul is just slowly dying, and his morality is just eroding choice by choice. It's a low-key, really good performance from a impeccable actor who's always great. Okay, best death. Are you feeling like a Marco impression?
Okay, I'm going to do my Marco impression.
Okay, it's
Sorry
the best
in advance,
death.
Paul.
The best death presented by Marco.
No more table! Next time you have a chance to kill someone, don't hesitate. Thank you. Yes,
love it.
Do
you
have a favorite Die Hard terror thief out of interest, or Paul?
Like, what do you mean terror thief?
One of the gang, like your Carl, your Fritz.
No. I mean, it's without. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was going to say the right one. I mean, look. It's going to be, and I'm forgetting his name, but the guy who's on the computer is like, he shoots, he scores.
Theo!
Yes, Theo.
Yes. Great choice.
Great early movie hacker.
Yes.
Maybe there's no Greg Germain in this movie without Theo,
Shout
the
out
computers
to Theo.
guy. He's good with computers.
I love Theo.
You gotta
And the
have
quarterback is toast.
And the quarterback, that's the line,
Then I have three nominees. Again, it's a bit of a sober film for like glib deaths.
Yeah.
Poor Moira, strangled by Cortez when she thought she was on for a shag.
It's personal.
That was a sad one. Escobedo being suddenly shot in the back. That kind of crept up on me when I watched that out, because I couldn't quite remember how that plot line played out. And then when he was suddenly shot, because it's set up like it's going to be an Untouchables type scene where he's got the swinging the baseball bat around, and you think he's going to take out Joaquim de Almeida, and then he gets shot in the back, and then the army sniper Chavez shooting Felix Cortez from a helicopter while in midair, mid-flight, a very difficult skill, paying off that moment that was set up so beautifully in the scene that you talked about with his training, where we see how good he was. So I had those as my three picks. Do you have anything to add or a pick out of those for your best death?
No, I think probably the choke out. Because the choke out is like it's a nice little it's a nice little side tangent story that gets enough like love that you feel for her. It doesn't just feel like empty, and it's personal and it's small. I don't know. I like that. She's an innocent,
I really like the scene where her boss's like new boyfriend, he passes their note. I feel like it just enriches the kind of movie. Like it just gives it a more I don't know, gives it some density, and lot going. And she's
a really
good
actress as well. And Magnuson as Moira Wolfson.
Yeah, my pick is one of the guys who gets picked up on the roof during the ambush, because it's pretty impressive that in a moving car with a handgun, one of these guys manages to take out one of the snipers on the roof. Every time I watch it, I'm like, wow, that's a pretty impressive takedown. That's my pick. But the Raymond Cruz one is good too. Phil, let's take a break, and when we get back, we'll do our quiz.
All right, so we're back and we're moving on to our final section of the show, Double Jeopardy. The Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, Liam's least favorite section of the show.
I hate this part.
Okay, I'm going to move through this briskly. So the rules, Paul, are very simple. There's going to be 3 questions, and you can choose to either compete or collaborate with Liam.
Okay,
and each question has 1 clue where you can phone a friend, or AKA you can radio Al Powell.
Okay, great. I love it.
Do you want to collab or compete?
I will collab because I'm also not a strong
Quiz taker?
trivia. Yeah,
Okay.
quiz taker.
Me too.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay. Question number 1. Actor Henry Czerny is well known for playing government authority figures, notably the character of Kidrich in the Mission Impossible series. But Czerny also had a brief cameo as an agency director named MacReady in a bombastic 2010 action movie that was also adapted from a popular television show. Can you name that movie?
Okay. I want to...
2010.
Oh, I know what this is. I do know what this is.
Go for it.
I have a thought. The A-Team.
Is the correct answer.
Paul, what an incredible pull. Oh my God, I'm glad we're collabing.
It's a real look down. And I think it was maybe just stuck in my brain because when I was reading about the movie, I was like, Henry Czerny, I really like him. And I think it just got locked in there.
That's great. Wow. Okay, cool.
Raymond Cruz plays the character of Domingo Chavez, a skilled sniper in the U.S. military. But in which intense 2001 cop drama does Cruz play an L.A. gangster whose character is actually named Sniper?
Whoa, that's a good one.
Paul, I don't know. What is it?
Sniper. All right, hold on. I'm thinking about this too. All right.
L.A.
No, is he in L.A. Confidential? No. Was he?
No.
All right, hold on. All right, I'm thinking. All right, so what year is it? Give me the year one more time.
2001.
Fuck. Okay. I think I have it. Collateral Damage, the Schwarzenegger movie.
Is the wrong answer.
Oh no.
Is it Training
But a
Day?
good guess. It's Training Day.
We got there.
Also featuring Harris Yulin.
Look at that.
Look at that.
Okay. This is Convoluted Corner. The most tortured trivia quiz questions you can imagine. Okay, here we go. Die Hard director John McTiernan made a total of 11 films in his career. 2 of those films were shot by this movie's DP, Donald McAlpine. But The Hunt for Red October was not one of them. Can you name the 2 aesthetically similar films where McTiernan and McAlpine collaborated?
Oh my God, Phil.
Oh, I think I want to like. All right, my thought would be, okay. Can we talk it out before I give it in?
Please.
So my thought is that I go immediately to Predator.
Okay.
Because Predator and I think Last Action Hero, the 2 that I'm like, but Last Action Hero is not the same.
Stylist.
Right? But I think Predator, it's jungles, helicopters, get them to the chopper. Like that's aesthetically the same kind of idea, right?
So one's you gotta give a little bit. So one's Predator. One we're getting notes. One may be Predator.
The clue was both films were set in the jungle. So you're absolutely on the right track.
Right, so we know Last Action Hero.
One of them is Predator.
So,
one of them is Predator.
Okay, so he did.
Tempted to Google John McTiernan. No, I'm not gonna do that. That's rude.
Oh wait, no. Okay, I know what it is. It's not Mosquito Coast. It is. Okay. It's a similar one. It's like
Oh, Medicine Man! It's Medicine Man.
Yes, that's it.
Bravo, guys!
Yes,
that was a great collab.
We did it.
Of you,
amazing,
working together, just like
that.
Harrison Ford and Willem Dafoe to
incredible.
to crack
you
it.
said when you said Mosquito
like
Coast, I was like Mosquito Coast. Oh, incredible! Oh.
It's a movie that I feel like I've never even seen.
I mean,
but I know the poster.
I've seen it once.
So well.
I think Lorraine Bracco, great actress.
Yes,
that gave me the warm and fuzzies. That was wonderful. That's it. Paul,
thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, please, my pleasure.
You've always got a bunch of fascinating things going on. We're so grateful that you gave up some of your time to do this. It's been an absolute thrill. What have you got going on at the moment that people should know about?
You guys did the best sales pitch I could ever give for my podcast, How Did This Get Made and Unspooled. And in addition to that, we go on the road. We're on tour a lot with How Did This Get Made, so just check out hdtgm.com. And yeah, that's it. I don't have to sit here and plug overly too much. And I guess according to the SAG Stricts, I can't. So that I can please plug my podcast.
Thanks, Paul. We really, really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for coming on.
No
this
problem.
Has been amazing.
Thanks, guys. You guys were fantastic. Thanks a lot. I'll talk to you all soon.
Take care. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Scheer. What a mensch. What a fellow.
That just happened.
We're so thankful to him. You know what else just happened, Phil?
What, Liam?
Whoa, calm down there, big guy. Is our friend Dave on Twitter. Have you heard of Twitter?
No.
Twitter, it's a website where you can tweet your thoughts. He tweeted earlier today, at the Getty Museum, listening to Die Hard on a Blank talk about Irish Catholic imagery in Blown Away, while I look at 1400s Catholic art. Superb.
Excellent.
So we travel well. I think we pair well with a museum, a walk in the nature, a martini at your house. That's how I listen to it. So I'm just sort of, speaking for myself. Dave, you're the best. Just a great super fan of the show, and we appreciate you.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
We love the tags online. I'm at Liam G. Billingham on Twitter. Phil is at Philip Gothorn. Phil, you're still on Twitter these days? You've been spending a lot more time on there, I feel like.
Yeah, I need to have a bit about going on X.
Yeah,
but I don't.
Where can we find you?
I need to work
Where
on
can
that.
we find you?
Yeah, at Philip Gawthorne, shouting into the void as usual.
Shout into the void, like we all are on these microphones. No new reviews to read this week. We appreciate them. We appreciate
Sort it
you
out,
letting
guys.
us. Yeah, let's get her. I'm going to write
happening?
one. These guys are so handsome, and their episodes are the perfect length. Love, Suzanne Billingham, my mom. Oh, Mom, that was really nice. Thank you. She doesn't. I don't know if she's ever heard the show. That's okay. Let's see. What else? What else did I want to say? Listen, the biggest thing that you can do if you're a fan of the show is to tell your friends who love action movies about the show. Get them in, get them on board, get them listening. That's what we need from you. Next time on Phil.
Yes.
Phil.
Yes.
Phil.
Yes.
What's next on Die Hard on a Blank? What film are we covering?
Next is the 1994 action spy thriller Terminal Velocity, starring Charlie Sheen, Natasha Kinski, James Gandolfini, and various others. Interesting movie.
Fun fact about
looking forward to digging in.
A fun fact about that movie is I've never seen it, and I know next to nothing about it, but I vaguely remember it coming out. Same year, right? Soon after?
Yep, pretty close.
Interesting.
In this golden summer of 1994.
Ooh, you should get a job working for 1994 talking about it. I guess you kind of have one, at least the past few weeks.
Isn't that what this is?
Oh, my goodness.
1994 Industries?
1994 Industries. We love to talk about movies we love. This is going off the rails. We'll be back next time with some new FBI guys, I guess. Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast created and hosted by Philip Gawthorne. Liam Billingham co-hosts and produces the show. Mike Mayer and Michael Sugar are the executive producers. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at DieHardOAB. Rate, review, follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. Most importantly, tell your movie podcast-loving friends about Die Hard on a Blank. Special thanks to Suki Chu. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.